Getting there. That one.
And we're live.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Chris.
Here.
Dave.
Here.
Richard. Chris.
Here.
Yancy. Tor. Sally.
Present.
Okay. We have public hearing items. Do we have any testimony on the code amendments and the code in general? Anybody would like to come up to the podium and speak?
What are we looking at?
Oh, I need my pen out.
This one?
Good evening. My name is David Whitethorn. I've got a couple of questions for you. Maybe some of these people need the answer to it too. What code amendments are we looking at, and what are you guys planning on changes in these code amendments? See, it doesn't state anything, so we're kind of in the blind here.
We have a list here of amendments to the new code that, and have you had a chance to look at the new code?
Nope.
Okay.
And I don't think any
Yeah.
of some of these other folks have had the chance to look at any of that either. I mean, this is kind of new to a lot of them. They haven't had a chance to see this stuff, so, and that's kind of why we're here, I think.
Okay. I'll just give you a quick rundown of what the list is, and we'll get into more details because we're probably going to be discussing them here in a bit, I believe. We have standards for residential dwellings on Main Street, which is basically that residential dwellings have to be on the second floor, not on the first floor, and that's just a summary of that one. Standards for personal warehouse in a residential district. We have correct floodplain base elevations, which is just a minor change in what the elevations are that's printed in the code. We have insert a historic district overlay map, insert a Main Street district overlay map, and then we have an amendment to allow attached ADU to be up to 40 to 80% of the primary dwelling, depending on lot size, but cannot exceed 800 square feet.
Detached.
Detached, yes. We have expand public notice requirement for type 2 administrative review with notice, which includes publication in the borough website and in the newspaper. We have expand the definition of artisanal use to include woodworking and welding. The use would still be limited to use that is blended with retail use. In other words, the manufacture of products designed for on-site retail sale. We have an amendment to limit the home occupation to 400 square feet, variance required to exceed that. We want to maintain the 10-foot side yard setback in the medium-density residential. And then we've got two amendments to do with market gardens, allowing those in commercial districts and allowing those in rural residential districts. And then there is some zoning map amendments to allow the commercial zoning through Hammer Slough Historic District and maintaining industrial zoning on Lyons Road are the ones that have been suggested. We are open to more amendments, and we have another meeting coming up on the 20th. And
6th.
or what?
March 6th.
March 6th, that's right. This is the 20th. We have the March 6th meeting coming up where we'll make a final recommendation to the Borough Assembly and vote on all the amendments at that point. So there's time to put in more amendments if people are interested. And the code, it should be available. Liz, where is it available for people to take a look at?
It was published online at the end of December, and then there's hard copies here and at the public library, and it's included in the packet with the original, when we first started having this hearing, the code was included in that packet, and then since then, we've just included the amendments that people have suggested. And so the public hearing today isn't just about those amendments, it's about the entire proposed new code. So any of those things are available, including the amendments as well, but anything that people wanted to talk about as far as the proposed code is up for discussion. And just as a note, those zoning map amendments that you mentioned, we're not looking at the zoning map at this time, but those are included on your list of amendments so that we don't forget about them since we received those comments. So those are not actionable amendments. Those are notes for future from comments that we've received.
So hard copies are available from you downstairs in your office?
No, it's right here at the finance office or downstairs with me or at the public library. Any of those places have a hard copy.
Yeah, because there is a few concerns, people with industrial property around to see what's happening and what's taking place. Mm-hmm. And I even hear of some questions on home occupational changing, down to 400 square feet. So that was my interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a question from the floor.
Mr. Chairman,
Please come up and state your name, and it has to be recorded for the record, so.
Oh, okay. Brian Paust. So all these matters, including the tiny house business, that'll be discussed at a later time? Is that correct?
We're going to be voting to recommend this code and finalize any amendments at our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So we've got, and then we recommend it to the Borough Assembly, then the Borough Assembly does 3 votes on the code
Okay.
Before it is made into law.
So I and a bunch of other people need to do our homework now. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Hello, my name is David Griffin, and I work for the Trust Land Office. Mm-hmm. And yeah, basically, I had some other business to attend to here in Petersburg, so it kind of worked out to attend this meeting. Mm-hmm. And this is the Planning Commission, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the Trust Land Office, we own and manage quite a bit of land here in Petersburg, a little bit over on Kupreanof side. Roughly, thank you. At this point, we've got a couple of thousand acres spread across a couple hundred different parcels. We are currently in the process of having a bunch of property surveyed as a result of the land exchange with the U.S. Forest Service. And the way those contracts are written right now, they're more or less scheduled to be completed in the spring of 2019. So you guys will see some of those plats probably come through, or Liz will, or whoever your reviewer is on those. So, and I have not had a chance to read through. This is a new code, correct?
Yes.
And it was just released at the end of
December.
Okay, and so it's this is kind of a fast time frame, correct? You guys agree? Or is this normal time frame for something like that?
We started working on this about a year ago.
Yeah.
Okay, but for the public review?
Mr. Chair, no, all the meetings have been open to the public. Everything we do is public, and we've been talking about this process and what would go into this for, a year now? Liz, we probably had 12 meetings already about it. So
Yeah.
Okay.
what we're doing is we're kind of reaching the end of the process where we actually have, we were going through section by section. It's a lot of stuff. So it's something we haven't been doing in a vacuum, if that's what you're implying.
I'm just trying
No,
to figure
no.
out the schedule.
No, we've
But
had,
this is kind of, I just found out about
Right.
this new code recently. So I'm just trying to figure out the time frame. So to me, it seems a little quick, like released at the end of December, and then it's going to be forwarded to the assembly basically at the beginning of March. But were the pieces available, and then at the end of December, then the whole thing kind of came together?
Right.
Is that
We started discussing it about a year ago,
okay?
so.
So I have not had, I've like perused it, but I haven't had a chance to like really go through it very quick. So one of my comments would be to potentially allow a little bit more time for review. And that there may be others in here that need a little bit more time, I don't know. That's one comment. The other comment,
how much time he needs.
so just so I'm clear, you need to get comments by March 6th, is that correct? For what's being presented in the current version?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
No, actually, March 6th for inclusion in what the Planning Commission recommends to the Assembly. But the final process actually isn't scheduled to be done until the beginning of May. And so public comments are available, you can comment all the way through until the Assembly makes its final action, which currently is scheduled for
May 7th.
May 7th, yeah. So no, it's not May 6th, March 6th.
Okay. So the comments, any comments we have that's specific to the Planning Commission need to be to you by March 6th?
Right, and then we recommend on March 6th is what we're scheduling, and then they have it scheduled for the April 2nd meeting with the Borough Assembly, the April 16th meeting with the Borough Assembly, and then the May 7th meeting with the Borough Assembly.
Thank you, that helps.
And it looks like April 16th is kind of the key one for the Assembly for public comment.
April 16th?
Yeah, it says Borough Assembly holds formal public hearing on the code, considers Planning Commission recommendations, and verbal public comments, considers ordinance in second reading.
Okay. Looking through there weren't nothing like jumped out like super red flags, but it's pretty dense. There's a lot in that.
No.
So Godspeed on getting all that implemented. It's going to be a lot of work. And I also understand that right now the borough has plating authority within Service Area 1. And as a result of the adoption of this code, then that would expand it borough-wide. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. When is the estimated time of adoption of this code?
Liz?
Right now, July 1st, but the plating authority, the Assembly has to pass a resolution taking back plating authority from DNR and provide that to DNR. I'm not sure at this time if it's going to be July 1st or later than that. And just as a side note, I've had the surveyors that you're contracting with you contact me about timing on that because they're a little concerned about starting the plating process with DNR and then having the plating authority change in the middle of their review. And so I've told them to keep in touch, and I'd like to provide something for them so that if they start the plating procedure and review with DNR, it would stay with DNR until that plat was completed so that they're not forced to change from one to the other in the middle of their process. So.
Okay, that's good to know because that's a multi-$100,000 contract we have. So last thing we want is changes to plating going through and then having to go back and redo a bunch of work. I would recommend, and I don't know if that would come through you guys, but I would recommend, if at all possible, unless there's some urgent need for you guys to take over plating, to maybe wait until summer 2019. That's just another comment I have because along those lines of the survey with the Forest Service Land Exchange, I'm also in the midst of potentially putting out some contracts for surveys, so it would behoove my agency if we knew that as we move forward, there's not a moving target on the date. I mean, ideally, if I knew that, for instance, for sure and maybe this is asking too much, I don't know, but if I knew that for sure that the borough wouldn't ask for the plating authority back until July 1st, 2019, then that would allow me to move forward with a couple of projects that I have in the works. If not, if I know that that date is fairly firm for 2018, then I would likely hold off on these projects. And just bear in mind that these projects would benefit the borough because they would be some minor subdivisions that would expand the tax base. But in the event that I can't, in the event that I'm not real sure where that date is, then we may hold back because some of the requirements would be so cost prohibitive for us to move forward with these projects that they just don't pencil out. So that's something to bear in mind. And so thanks for listening to me on that. That's really all I have. I just, I'm going to try to take a close look at this in the coming days and try to get any comments that I have to this group by March 6th. And then with the understanding that there are other opportunities to provide comment as time allows, all the way through, looks like April 16th. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you
Very much.
Dave.
Liz, I'm confused. Could you clarify? Now, my understanding when we were taking over the plating authority, it was going to be cheaper for people to plat through us than it was through the state. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Assuming that the assembly doesn't radically change the prices on the cost of reviewing subdivisions, yeah.
The point that I'm making, though, is right now, right now, outside of Service Area 1, if I want to plat a minor subdivision, or any subdivision for that matter, and plat public easements and utility easements, I can do so without having to actually construct or bring utilities in. Once the borough gets plating authority, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, but once the borough gets plating authority, then if I do a subdivision and I dedicate a road or utility corridor, then we have to construct. And so an agency like mine, where we have 1 million acres across the state, if I look at a project that may cost $200,000 or $300,000 just in survey work alone, that may not free up time to build the roads or bring in electricity. Not to say that we wouldn't do that in the future, but if I'm going to spend time here and bring surveyors into Petersburg, I may want to look at, and because we have some large tracts of land down south of Papke's, I may want to look at subdividing some of these tracts into 10 5-acre lots or 10 10-acre lots. And under the current situation, I can do that by working through the state and as the plating authority. But once that's gone, then any of those roads that we plat will have to be developed according to the code, in which case we just wouldn't do it because it's expensive to build a road.
Chris?
Yes.
Correct me, Liz, that's not correct, is it? I mean,
Not exactly, no.
okay.
It depends on the location of the subdivision, and it depends on the size of the subdivision. There's provisions for, particularly for remote subdivisions, there's provisions for privately maintained roads that do not need to be built to borough standards outside of Service Area 1. As far as the utility extension, if you're more than, I think it's 1,500 feet from an existing municipal utility, you're not running water and sewer to that subdivision. And as far as electric utility, that portion of the code stays the same. So currently, if you want to run power, you have to run it under the current code. It doesn't change anything.
Did that answer your question?
No, I was just asking her to clarify for you that what we had attempted to do with this was to make it easier to plat and subdivide, not make it harder, because right now, as you're probably well aware, going through the state is a rather lengthy process. And,
Well, the plating part's really not that.
right,
It's the requirements, the criteria that you would require. I mean, like Liz said, there are some exceptions, but, 1,500 feet from the road, right?
It's 1,500 feet from existing utility.
Existing water and sewer
Sewer
utility.
ends at 4.5
4
miles,
mile.
doesn't it?
Well, right now, if I wanted to construct a road, or if I wanted to do a subdivision off of the Mitkoff Highway and plat it and create a public road and a public utility easement, I could do so without having to construct it. But once you guys get plating authority, then I will have to construct it.
Liz, you want to?
Again, it depends on the size of the subdivision, and also how far you are from a publicly maintained road. The portion that it deals with extension of electric utility does not change. So that's still the same in our code, regardless of the plating authority. As far as the road's concerned, outside of Service Area 1, there is no requirement to build it to borough standards. It becomes a privately maintained road. And again, it depends on the number of lots that you're creating and how far you are from a publicly maintained road. So again, that depends where you are and how big,
I guess my understanding is that it would change and it would become more cost prohibitive because we would have to build roads where currently we don't have to. So,
Well, again, if it's a privately maintained road outside of Service Area 1, you would not be
no,
required.
I'm talking about public roads. Like if I dedicate a public road on a plat,
Yeah. Liz,
Yeah, just because you dedicate a public road on a plat, you're not going to be required to build the road to a public borough standard, the way the proposed code reads right now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Outside of Service Area 1, yeah, no.
oh,
No.
So,
No.
okay, that's good to know. So I will, just so I'm clear, I will not have to be, I'm not subject to build roads based on the borough standard outside Service Area 1.
Outside of Service Area 1, you're not building to borough road standard.
Okay.
Right.
Is there any standard do we have to build any road at all?
Depending on how far you are from the road and how big the subdivision is, there might be a requirement to build a road. And then if you want to run power, the power utility is going to make you build the road.
And that is all listed in.
That's already existing code.
I'm not too worried about the electric because that's not as expensive as having to build a
But
road.
the power utility probably will not run the power unless you build the road. And that's not something that we're creating now. That's the way it is now, like under the current existing code.
so that part wouldn't change.
Right. And it wouldn't have to, they could build that along any type of road is what you're saying. It wouldn't
So-
have to be a borough standard road. It could
Right.
be any type of road.
Well, I would like to think that our Public Works Department and our utility would expect that it would be a road that they could drive on safely.
Right.
But as far as having it built to borough standard, no, not outside Service Area 1.
Okay. Okay. Clear as mud?
Right?
I'm Mike Etcher. I heard you mention that something about Lyons Road and some of these changes that was taken out of there or something because we own a lot of property there with Etcher Logging. I'm curious if that was in some of these commercial, going from commercial industrial to light commercial or whatever they're trying to change some property
Liz?
to.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear quite what he...
Well, anyhow, I was asking about,
okay.
I heard a comment that you said Lyons Road was not part of this or something. That's why I was kind of concerned about this because of, I'm concerned about all of Etcher Logging's holdings there, but you're changing commercial industrial to wanting to change some of it to light commercial?
Liz, what is the plan?
That's in the
on Lyons?
packet I can get later then?
It's just a zoning map amendment.
So we're not actually rezoning any property through this process, right? So just so you know that what we're doing is creating the categories that in the future we would move property into. So if this is adopted, it doesn't change anybody's zoning yet, right? And I can only give you what my own proposal would be, but it's really up to the Planning Commission and the Assembly to make those final decisions, not mine. But as far as Lyons Road, I don't see why that would change from the industrial district that it's in right now. The only places we've talked about as far as changing from industrial to kind of a light industrial designation is Scow Bay Loop on the water side, the upper part of Cornelius Road, which is all those warehouses right now, and then also possibly in the Hungerford Hill area. If I was a industrial landowner on Lyons Road that my property backed up to Cornelius, Cornelius is currently zoned residential, and so you have to take the setback requirement from Cornelius onto your industrial property. So I would be a strong advocate to move Cornelius into light industrial, because if Cornelius was light industrial, you wouldn't have that, and you would actually be able to use more of your industrial property.
Well, most of Cornelius, I believe, is residential now.
It's all residential. It's completely residential right now.
That's what I thought, because I looked at buying a piece of property there and putting up a modular type home, and I was told I couldn't do it, so I didn't buy the property and do that subject, which I was going to at one time. So I was just I heard that they were changing commercial industrial possibly to light commercial, and I was wondering what that was all about and why and how come, of course, but I'll have to get the rest of the papers.
The areas where there's a mixture of industrial, light industry and residential is why we've kind of decided to go with this light industry type zoning.
There's a whole lot of fishing warehouses and fishing gear piled all over town, and I know it's a fishing community. I've been here 40-some years now, and I know everybody, and I understand that point, but they say there's nothing you can do about in a residential area, in a residential yard, that they got a whole bunch of fishing crab pots and skiffs and boats and things because it's a fishing community. So I've been concerned about that for a lot of years, and the borough's making a lot of changes. I just wanted to be aware of it, so I'll come see Liz and get a copy of these changes and stuff, just so I'm kind of up on what's going on. That was my only question.
You made a comment about modular homes. Those are going to be allowed under this.
You're making a change in that then?
Yeah, modular homes will be allowed on single-family residential.
Well, but the lot I was looking at was right behind my son's house who's on Etcher subdivision, and it's on Cornelius, one of Weaver's there, and I was talking about I was going to buy it last spring and rock the rest of it in and put up a nice garage and deck and a modular type development, and I was told I couldn't do that. That's why I was, and that's interesting. So
the current code prohibits modular homes, but the new code will allow them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I think if you take a look at this, we're trying to make it easier to do things, not harder. I know the first instinct is, I know, well, no, there's a lot of, and in the past, there had.
I know.
Yeah, I know this thing's dense. I've read it a couple of times too, and I have no desire to do that, so.
I can't hear you. What is it you're trying to make easier? Because I couldn't hear his question for you.
What we're trying to do with the development code, what we're proposing to do, is going to make it easier to do a lot of things that you cannot do right now with the existing code. And one of the examples is they've put in standards for modular homes, so you can put modular homes on residential lots. And basically what it's done is, if you take a look at it, it's gone through and it's cleared a lot of things up, a lot of inconsistencies that has existed in the code in the past that have caused a lot of problems and confusion. And that's kind of what we're attempting to do this. What this isn't doing is it's not going into an area and saying, okay, you're now commercial, oh, but you were residential before. It's not actually changing zoning of a specific lot as it exists right now. But what it is it's a template for going forward.
Well, they have some attractive modulars. Modulars, I know trailers are a different story, but modulars, yeah. I mean,
It's also, we're trying to simplify where you find stuff in the code. So it's much more straightforward of where from your lot, you go look and say, I'm this zoning, and you can very quickly find out what rules apply to you. And it's a lot more straightforward than the old code, because the old code had been added on to and added on to and added on to over a number of years, and made it a little bit more difficult to find the parts that were applicable to a particular lot. So it should be a lot more straightforward with the way this code's set up now.
Understandable, but we looked for over a year to a place to build the shop that Etch's Auto's in now, because no place would allow it in Petersburg. None of the lots up by Hammers, 12th, all over town we looked, and we had Joe even trying to, and he said there just wasn't. So, and we, that's when we decided to build in our own commercial industrial lot between there, and it worked out much better. We had a lot more land and room, so I guess everything happens for a reason. I just, it was really interesting to find out we couldn't build an automotive shop anywhere in Petersburg, so, but the zoning that was present at that time, but that was past tense, so I'll leave you guys to your business. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
I'll get the information from Liz then later, tomorrow or something. Okay. Thank you.
Dave?
Yeah, actually, one of the things that as Matt said, is that there's just no industrial land in Petersburg, and it's really limited. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do, is we're trying to make it so that, that we're going to, going forward, we want to have more opportunities for industrial development. But what we're trying not to do is not trying to put industrial developments right next to residential subdivisions. So, and that's kind of where, that I've seen in my limited time on the Planning and Zoning Commission, where a lot of the issues come up, is when you have people that are living in an area where their neighbor is basically doing an industrial activity. And as you guys know, if you're doing an automotive shop, you're making a fair amount of noise, and a lot of things like that are going on. And it's not necessarily conducive if you're right in the middle of a residential subdivision. So the idea is that going forward, as the community develops, you can't go back and fix what's happened for the last 100 years, right? But that's not to say that going forward, as the borough expands, and the borough now has a lot of land that we will be receiving from the state. There's a lot of, that's the one thing we have in this community that most other places in Southeast Alaska don't have, is we have a lot of land. And that's going to be one of the biggest assets, I believe, that this community will have in the future, is that we will have developable land, whereas other places you can't even find a place to park a bicycle, let alone, build anything. So that's kind of what this is for, is to make sure that as we go forward, we have a template of everybody understanding, what they can do and can't do.
Is this open, Mike? I have a question
Name.
of what you guys are thinking about.
Joe,
State your name.
Oh, Joe Aliberti. Here we go.
Are you speaking on your own behalf?
Huh?
Are you speaking on your own behalf?
I'm speaking on my own behalf.
Thank you.
What are you guys thinking about? What is your conversations, your thought process to do with residential dwellings, residential areas? Are you addressing that in your comprehensive? I know we want more industrial. We want this. Everybody wants, a place to put their shop, or a place to put this, or a place to put that. I haven't seen, I've had dealings already with residential versus, and the way that we deal with it right now is that, here's the story I get, and I believe this is the way it is. I want to put up a 50 by 100 warehouse in a residential zone. If I go and put a plank with 2 holes in it and a roof over the top of it and call it my house, I can build the 50 by 100 by 40 foot tall warehouse in a residential area. Are you guys going to try to, you know, when I read what it says about a residential area, it says the number one, you know, aspect of a residential area is to protect it as a residential area. It's the main function of a residential area. Now, if you're going to still let people build 50 by 100 or 100 by 100 or whatever size in a house like this on a residential area, then you should just get rid of residential zoning, because there's no point. There's no point. There's no protection for homeowners in a residential area.
We have an amendment that we're actually considering concerning this exact thing.
Yep.
So it's, there's a personal warehouse in a residential district, and one of the sections in there, section C, is a floor area. A personal warehouse shall not exceed, and we haven't set it, so many square feet of floor area or a certain percentage of the residential use.
It's a great idea.
So I was actually thinking that we might want to change that to a percentage of the residential use to a maximum of a certain amount of floor
Well,
area.
because the way it is now,
But-
and I talked to, you know, the building inspector, I just had a thing I went through, and I'm so upset with it, you know, it's just, it's beyond me probably discussing it with you guys, but it's, the whole point is that you just shouldn't have it if you're not going to do something like that. I mean, I have one now, I should have brought a picture of the thing, and it's in a residential area, and it is just a monster. I mean, it's bigger than Ole's warehouse. It's huge, huge. And the other thing that I don't know how stringent the building department was, well, if you're building a house, it's okay, we can't restrict the size of this thing. But this guy really needed to understand, because through the grapevine, and I'm involved in building and people that do other work for other people that build buildings, I have heard that this person wants to use this for boat storage, heated boat storage. Now, are you going to have something in there, if he does that you can go do something to him to get him, or are you just going to, well, you know, he's already got the building there, what are we going to do? We don't have any teeth in this thing. Are you going to put something in there if people start using a residential building for a commercial use? Are you going to be able to go in there and say, hey, you're out of here?
We have a whole section on
Is there something about that?
home-based business in
How much teeth are in it, though? I've dealt with things that have teeth in it around here, and most of them don't.
Liz,
Does it
you
have
wanna-
something in there that says that, you know, you guys can go and smack them? Get them out of there? Are you going to go check your bank accounts? What are you going to do? How are you going to get them out? Once you let them build it?
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he was looking at you. Is there something in there that does that?
So-
I mean, if it doesn't have anything in there like that, it's useless.
So what we have is a violation of this ordinance, if it was adopted, would be a violation of our nuisance ordinance. And then we would follow that procedure to try and bring someone into compliance. Our nuisance ordinance was revised last year, and so far we haven't had it seriously tested, I guess. You know, we've been able to accomplish what we've been trying to accomplish in terms of getting people to abate the violation, but they've been pretty straightforward where, you know, someone is storing gear on a residential lot, which is a zoning violation, and so it's pretty easy for us to go in and say, here is the zoning violation, and then come back tweaks later and say, oh, now the lot is clear, the zoning violation is taken care of. If it's something like what Mr. Aliberti is describing, we haven't had to pursue something like that, so I'm not 100%, I can't give you a 100% guarantee on how this code would work and how that ordinance would work in trying to do something like this, because it's a little bit more insidious in terms of, trying to actually nail somebody down on what they're doing with their property. So I'd like to say, yes, it's rock solid, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
Well, so now what you have and what's going to be in this new one would be, it would still follow the nuisance ordinance. So basically, you're creating a nuisance because you're renting out boat storage in a residential area.
Right, you're creating a nuisance because you're violating.
What do you do? What powers do you have after that person?
So what we've done.
How do you go get him?
So what we've done in the past is we've actually gone to court and gotten an administrative search warrant so we could go into the property and into the dwelling and actually look for a code violation. So I think in your case...
Now that's code.
Well, no, the code violation would be using the property for a commercial use. I think in your case, the difficulty, just sort of thinking off the cuff, would be someone's got a boat that's not theirs in there, so how do we know that it's a commercial deal versus just I'm letting my friend put his or her boat in there?
And you get into bank accounts.
And we haven't ever explored the possibility of trying to search somebody, go down that road. So
you're going to run into this if this guy does what he said he's going to do, and you're going to have to do something about it because I'm going to be like here every day. You get tired of me when you're talking. Because, and I don't think it was told to him probably strong enough. Hey, you got a 50 by 100 building here. It's supposed to be for your personal stuff. Okay, so the guy's got a plane, a boat, a yacht, a what, okay, so he says he has all this stuff. Right? He says he has all this stuff, right? Well, I like your idea anyway of saying that you're going to do maybe a certain size. Like a 30 by 40 garage is a pretty good size garage. That's 1,200 square feet. Or, maybe, something in that range. It fits to, and I don't know how you would set it up. I mean, there'll be more input on this, I imagine, as time goes on. And maybe I'll think about it and see if I can, but I'd really like to see it protected. What's up there now, what happened up there, it's really a shame. I tried really hard. I fought this whole thing about, these dang net sheds which to me, talking to the appraiser, which nobody wants to listen to, but he said, when that was originally set up, that was for people that lived on the water so they could have a net shed. It wasn't like this 50 by 50 warehouse. You got to do something to protect. It does say you should protect a residential. When you zone it residential, the number one purpose of that area is for residences. That should be the primary use of that property.
But I think that's what we're trying to address in this portion of the code.
So it should be primary, right? Not secondary. This one up there, that 50 by 100 thing that's 40 foot tall, he's going to build a little cracker box house next to. He did that because he knew he could get away with it. And then even him speaking to people here, other people, and saying, well, yeah, I'm going to rent it out for boat storage. So I hope you guys, keep track of that, or, I'll make sure if I see a bunch of boats up there, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks. Thanks for your time.
Please.
My name is Rick Braun. I'm speaking for myself. I just wanted to get a few things clear. So you're creating some new zones, basically, or the zones are redefined, and until you, and then once this code is passed by the assembly, then you'll go ahead and basically create a new zoning map for the whole borough?
That would be the next step, would be to go
Okay.
through and adjust
Okay.
the zoning map
All
to
right.
take into
So-
account the,
I think what would be helpful, I think people are kind of in the dark as to what's going on. And then at the beginning of the meeting, you had kind of a little summary of the most, the biggest changes or
Yeah, the
the
amendments
changes
that
that
have
might
been
affect
suggested,
most people.
yeah.
Another thing that you didn't mention is the bed and breakfasts, home occupation. Currently, you can just do it. You don't need a conditional use permit, but that's going to change, correct? No? You're going to,
Yes.
not going to need a conditional use
Depends.
permit?
hands.
Currently, home occupation, to begin with. So currently, we don't really have that very clearly defined in code, except as a definition that the maximum that you can use is 525 square feet. It is a conditional use, so you do need a conditional use permit. The way we've interpreted it is if you're having customers come to your home, you need the conditional use permit. If you just have a home occupation, but you don't have any customers coming, then you don't need a conditional use permit. But that's actually not in code. That's just kind of how we've always interpreted it. So under this proposed code, we actually codify that. So if you have home occupation, but you don't have an employee and you don't have customers, then you don't need any kind of permit. You just need to register for sales tax as you would normally for a business. If you do have customers or an employee, which is allowed, a single employee, then you would get what's called the home occupation permit. You don't actually have to come to the Planning Commission and have the hearing. That's an administrative permit. It will last for 5 years, and it is revoked if you sell your home. So it's actually to the owner, not to the property. So it's actually a same standards, more or less, that we've always had, except with the potential amendment that they're considering to reduce the square foot size, and a simpler process for the business owner.
So the bed and breakfast then?
Oh, and then the bed and breakfast, also not defined in code currently. We've basically used a definition of, I think it's a rooming house, to say it's you can't have a rooming house, but so anything up to a rooming house is considered a bed and breakfast, if that makes any sense. But anyway, that's the way it's been interpreted. Under the proposed code, we would actually have a definition of bed and breakfast. I think it's 2 rooms, which is what we do now for guests. And then if it's owner occupied, it's 2 rooms. You don't need a permit. There's some standards in there as far as parking. If you go beyond the 2 rooms, you're looking at a conditional use permit, and also under state law, you need to get a fire marshal review. Or if you're not, if it's not owner occupied. So basically, it's the same, except.
Okay, I guess that's kind of my point, is that some of these, if you would, it would be good if there was like a story in the paper, is what I'm saying. If maybe you could talk to the paper, have them get something, it's not too long, where people are just going to, eyes glaze over thing, but to tell people what's going on, I think. Don't you think that'd be a good idea?
Mr.
The
Chairman?
reporter's been here a couple times.
But has he written a story?
Yes.
To him.
Actually, there's been 2 news stories on the radio, and then
Okay.
we did a call-in show today, and there's been a story in the paper. He actually contacted me the other day about writing more stories, but I haven't heard from him again. So there might be more coming.
We've been
Okay,
trying.
great. The other thing that's near and dear to my heart is the transition from the DNR being the plating authority and the borough being the plating authority. It would be real nice. I mean, I really think you need to talk to DNR and coordinate so that we know on this day it's going to switch. And if you have, like, and I'm not so certain that DNR
if the borough takes over as plating authority and DNR is reviewing plats, I am not confident that they would say, oh, we'll do this one, even though the borough is now the plating authority. I think they would just throw it right back at the borough in a heartbeat. That's just my feeling. So it would be really nice if we knew which day it was going to be, and for sure, if there were plats in the pipeline at DNR, could we have a letter from them, a commitment that they are going to carry through and be the plating authority at that time? Because right now, we've put a note on the plat that the borough, has passed this resolution stating that they're the plating, that they have abrogated the authority over to DNR. And if somehow that wording interferes with them being able to be the plating authority because because the borough has then taken an action, that's going to be a foul up. That's going to throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. We won't know where our plat's supposed to go at that point. So it'd be nice if we get that cleared up. That's my main concern. Nice to have a date. Boom. That day, we know where to go. And if there's plats that are in the pipeline, what's going to happen to them? Those two things, main thing for me. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I follow up with something? David Griffin again. So I did want to just hammer home that we do have a lot of land here in the borough, and at this stage of the game, in terms of our land and resource extraction, that's pretty much done with because we've traded the timberlands with the Forest Service. So I don't predict you'll see the Trust Land Office coming into Petersburg wanting to do any logging or anything like that. So at this stage of the game, we are pretty much just looking at land sales, any sort of short-term uses, so permits, long-term uses such as leases, and then any easements like utilities, things like that. So I just wanted to throw that out there just so you guys as planners or commissioners on the Planning Commission understand kind of where we're at in our sort of strategy. Also, we do, when it comes to industrial uses, we do own quite a bit of land out behind the airport near that gravel pit. Mm-hmm. So if you guys have people that come to you, community members are like, hey, I don't know if the plan actually calls that out, because there's really not, there's like one map in there and so I don't really understand the zones and what's what, Hopefully there'll be more maps at some point.
Well, what we're doing right now is doing the text language of what the code is. The next phase, once this is approved, is to go in and make adjustments to the zoning maps of the borough.
So there are zoning maps right now?
We're operating off this existing zoning map.
It would be helpful, I think, to include those into this packet, because right now I don't have, I'm looking at this online, and I guess I could pull up the old,
All we have is the old ones.
Yeah,
the old maps.
that's what we're using, the old maps.
It'd just be helpful, I think, to have them include. Would it hurt to have maps in this?
We don't have maps that match up with this code. All we have is our current zoning maps, which match up with the current code. So if this gets adopted, then the next step would be for the commission to start putting property into these new codes. So we don't actually have a map that goes with this new code yet. We haven't done that process yet. That would be the whole secondary public process.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
We're not going to just do that and then suddenly we'll have the map. It's actually another entire public process to do the rezoning of the map with the maps. Yeah.
What else? The other question I had for you guys is, right now, who who else other than like the TLO and the Forest Service has large tracts of land that are on the road system here? And then what are your constituents, what are their desires for residential lots? Like, what would people be eager to see in terms of what they could purchase? 5 acres? 2 acres?
I'll just speak for myself. And this is just strictly for myself and not as a commissioner, but just some of the lots that were subdivided right above, out at Pappy's, right above the parking lot there. There was limited access to no access, and the lot sizes were too small. The problem you run into when you get out of the road or outside of Service Area 1 and you're not on a sewer system, you need to have a little bit more space on your lot size to comply with state regulations, and a lot of the lot sizes have been too small to allow for, proper sanitation. And so personally, I'd like to see larger lot sizes instead of, like a resident, or instead of like a city lot size out the road. It just makes it a lot easier in a rural residential area like you have, where there really aren't any services, and road building's expensive, power's expensive, Yeah, that's just a personal observation.
No, that's a good, that makes sense. And when we did GoldenEye, my predecessor had those lots at like half acres, and we listened to Liz and the mayor, and went back and actually combined a bunch of those lots to make larger lots. So you're not going to see us making anything smaller than an acre, but what I'd like to know is there a demand for 5 acre lots, 10 acre lots? Right now, if I moved to Petersburg and wanted more than an acre or two, are there opportunities to purchase pieces of land that are sizable?
I think there's some, Liz. I know people that I've talked to who said the reason they're considering moving out the road or have moved out the road is that they're looking for larger lots. So
that just helps my planning effort, because
People are looking for more area or larger lots that I know.
I don't think there's any 5 acre lots. What I'm looking at in terms of our land holdings here in Petersburg, especially outside of Service Area 1, would be 5, 10, even 20 acre lots. So if that's something that you think that the constituents here in Petersburg are interested in, or if you've heard that, I would just like to know. I don't want to subdivide large lots and then that's not what people want. But I know there's a lot of muskeg, so you don't have as much usable surface area as you might like without bringing in a lot of fill. And then the last thing, I guess, is I just wanted to thank you, Rick, for bringing up that question about a firm date. I think unless the borough is super eager to get a hold of Plating Authority right away, it might be good to just let the process work, the code changes work, the Borough Assembly adopt it, and then pick a date out in the future so it's a more seamless transition than having kind of a moving target. I think that would be beneficial, definitely beneficial to the trust, but I think it sounds like it would be beneficial to some projects that Rick is working on as well. So I think it may be less confusing. It might be more of a seamless transition, unless there's some urgent need to grab it and take it over right away. I would recommend just holding off on that till maybe summer 2019, like I mentioned earlier. All right, thanks.
thank you. Do you have any more comments?
questions? Need me up there?
Yep.
Okay. I'm Joe Alberti, and I represent myself. So, what are you guys? What's your plan then for this to, when you're going to come up with these? Are they recommendations? Are you going to have something? It's like what's in there now. If we read through this, is that pretty much what you guys have come up with so far? That's
This is pretty much what we've come up with so far, and then we've got a list of amendments that have
That
been
you're looking at.
suggested. We're going to vote on those. We'll put together the whole package, then we recommend that to the Borough
And then that's
Assembly.
going to come out.
That goes to the Borough Assembly, and the Borough Assembly,
Then the Assembly's going to go through the whole process.
they go through their three votes on it in a public hearing, so.
One other suggestion maybe that might help with that, the size of what you can build on a residential property, or how big your toy barn can be. You might be able to maybe make it up to a certain size, and then if you say, some guy he has a pretty good sized personal whatever he wants to store. I mean, there might be a conditional use thing that could get involved. But other than that, it's such a now it's so undefined. It's like there's no point in having residential, I believe, at this point. So, anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Discussion? Liz, I had a question. Are we going to be just doing discussion and voting on the amendments at this meeting, or are we doing that at the next meeting?
Well, I was thinking that we would wait until we had given everybody ample time to send in their comments, and then I got a few more today that I'll be drafting amendments for, and you'll have all of those on March 6th. Then what I was thinking is we would just number each one, and you could go through each one and vote it up or down, and if, as you vote them up, we'll incorporate it into the proposal, and at the end you could vote up or down on the whole package, if that seems reasonable.
Okay.
I'd like
And
to
we got
give,
any discussion about what any changes that we think might be better, at that time?
I'm sorry, what was that?
And we'd have some discussion about if we want to make minor changes to, like, particularly the one on the warehouses. You have just percentage, but you don't list the percentage or, square footage. Are we going to nail those numbers and percentages down at that time?
The commission can make any changes they want to those amendments, so yeah. I would recommend that we put a number in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just...
I was hoping for some comments on, what kind of number we'd be looking for. But as we go through each amendment, I think you'd probably make a motion for that amendment, and then you could have discussion. You could amend the amendment, and then vote on it, and then move to the next one, and then just work through each one and discuss each one as you see fit, and then alter each one as you see fit.
Okay. Any other comments from commissioners?
Just a question. Is it a noon meeting on March 6th?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds like it's going to be a long meeting.
Yes. I think it will be. All right, well, if there's no other discussion or comments, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I would hope that the Catholic Church thing would be earlier in the agenda for next meeting than later.
So this is the whole thing.